I was on the second day of my stay at a small, quiet hotel, the kind that's tucked away from the city center. The place was simple but cozy, perfect for someone looking to unwind after a few stressful weeks at work. I was lying in bed, trying to connect my phone to the hotel's Wi-Fi to watch a movie before falling asleep. When I opened the network settings, I noticed something strange. Besides the hotel's official network, there was another one available called Do Not Connect. It almost seemed like a joke, like someone had set it up just to mess with people. I was curious, who would name a network something like that? And why would anyone leave a network open without a password? At first, I thought about ignoring it and just connecting to the hotel's regular network, but that phrase, "Do not connect," kept nagging at me. It felt like a silent challenge. After a few minutes of hesitation, I decided to click on it just to see what would happen. To my surprise, it connected immediately, no password or authentication required. I thought it was weird, but I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was just a technical glitch or an old network someone had forgotten about. But before I could open any website or app, my phone buzzed with a notification. When I looked at the screen, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was a photo of me, taken just seconds earlier, from inside the very room I was in. I was lying in bed, phone in hand, exactly as I was in that moment. I froze. The image was crystal clear, as if taken by a professional camera, and it showed every detail of the room, the messy bed, the open suitcase on the floor, even the glass of water I'd left on the nightstand. But the most disturbing part was that there were no cameras in the room. At least, none that I knew of. I tried to convince myself it was some kind of mistake or maybe a tasteless prank by someone at the hotel. But then I noticed something even stranger. In the photo, the closet door was slightly open. I was absolutely certain I'd closed it before lying down. My heart started racing as I stared at it now, completely still, waiting for something to come out. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and tried to delete the photo, but it wouldn't go away. Every time I tried, an error message popped up saying the file was protected. That's when another notification flashed on the screen. It was another photo, this time, a close-up of my face, as if someone had been watching me from just inches away. It felt like whoever it was had been studying me, analyzing my every reaction. A cold sweat dripped down my forehead, and I had the unmistakable feeling that I was being watched. I looked around the room, trying to spot a hidden camera, but there was nothing. Still, the sensation of invisible eyes on me only grew. I decided to disconnect from that cursed network immediately, but when I tried, my phone wouldn't respond. The screen was stuck on the last photo I'd received, the close-up of my face, and none of the buttons worked. It was like the device was under someone else's control. I started feeling a pressure in my chest, as if the air in the room was getting heavier. I tried restarting the phone by holding down the power button, but it didn't even flicker. That's when I heard a noise coming from the bathroom. A low, almost imperceptible sound, like something being dragged across the floor. My entire body tensed up. I knew I'd left the bathroom door closed before lying down, but now it was slightly ajar, revealing only darkness. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but that feeling of being watched wouldn't go away. I slowly got out of bed, trying not to make a sound, and walked over to the bathroom. When I got closer, I noticed something was off. The mirror was fogged up, as if someone had run a wet hand over it. But what really sent a chill through me was what was written on it, in large, uneven letters: "You shouldn't have connected." The message looked fresh, as if it had been written just seconds ago. I quickly backed away, my heart pounding in my chest. I rushed back to the bed, grabbed my phone again, and, by some miracle, managed to turn it off. But I knew it wasn't over. I turned off the lights and burrowed under the covers, trying to convince myself that this was all in my head or maybe some kind of virus on my phone. But no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, that feeling of being watched wouldn't go away. The silence in the room felt heavy, like something was lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, I heard a noise from the closet, the same closet whose door had been slightly open in the photo. It was a faint creak, followed by a metallic click, as if something inside had been unlocked. I tried to tell myself it was just the old building making normal noises, but my whole body was shaking. I knew I needed to get out of there, but at the same time, I was afraid of what I might find. Finally, I mustered the courage to get out of bed. I grabbed the chair where I'd hung my clothes and used it as a makeshift weapon. I walked slowly toward the closet, trying to control my ragged breathing. When I got closer, I noticed the door was moving on its own, as if someone inside was pushing it open slowly. I stopped for a moment, my heart in my throat, waiting for it to open completely. But then, before I could do anything, my phone, which I'd turned off minutes ago, turned on by itself. The screen lit up with another notification, a new photo. This time, it was a picture of the closet itself, with me standing in front of it, staring directly at the camera. I froze, staring at the photo as if it might pull me into the phone. The image was recent, it had been taken just seconds ago, while I was standing there in front of the closet. But the most terrifying part was that, in the photo, the closet door was wide open, revealing something, or someone, hiding in the shadows inside. Yet in real life, the door was still closed. My whole body was shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Before I could react, the device started playing a strange sound, like a distorted buzzing that seemed to come from somewhere else. It was deafening, echoing through the room as if it were inside my head. Suddenly, the closet door swung open on its own, but there was nothing inside except complete darkness, a darkness that seemed to pulse, as if it were alive. I ran for the door, trying to get out as fast as I could, but it wouldn't open. I yanked on the handle with all my strength, but it was as if it had been locked from the outside. I stumbled back into the center of the room, looking around in panic, unsure of what to do. That's when my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a simple text message, written in white letters against a black background: "You never should have come." Before I could process it, the lights in the room flickered once, and then went out completely. When I woke up the next morning, I was lying in bed, my phone turned off beside me. The closet was closed, and there was no sign of what had happened. But to this day, whenever I see a Wi-Fi network named "Do Not Connect," I know better than to ignore the warning. I've always had a thing for old hotels, the ones with wide hallways, carpets worn by time, and that peculiar smell of aged wood mixed with dust. There's something enchanting about knowing these places carry the stories of people who've passed through over the years. So, when I chose to stay at the Windsor Hotel, a small, unassuming place in the middle of nowhere, I thought it would just be another quiet night before continuing my trip. But I was wrong. On the very first night, as I was unpacking my things in the room, I noticed something strange in the nightstand drawer, an old diary, with a cracked leather cover and yellowed pages. It looked like it had been forgotten there, as if someone had left it behind unintentionally. Curious, I started flipping through the pages. Most of the text was illegible, handwritten in a rushed, faded script. But the last entry caught my attention immediately. It was recent, dated just a few days before my arrival, and ended with a sentence that sent a chill down my spine: "If anyone reads this, please, don't open the door if they knock after midnight." There was nothing else after that. The next page was blank, as if the writer had been interrupted before finishing. I quickly closed the diary, trying to convince myself it was just a coincidence or maybe some kind of prank. But something deep in my gut told me those words were serious, and that I should pay attention. I tried to distract myself by watching a movie on my phone and reading some news, but that phrase wouldn't leave my head: "Don't open the door if they knock after midnight." It seemed absurd to give so much importance to something that was probably just a joke or an attempt to create an urban legend for the hotel. After all, the place was old, it must have had plenty of stories like that circulating among guests. Still, as the clock crept closer to midnight, I felt a growing unease. I was alone in the room, with only the dim light of the bedside lamp illuminating part of the space. The silence was almost palpable, broken only by the distant sound of wind rattling the windows. When the clock struck 12:01, I was already completely on edge, waiting for something to happen. And then, at 12:02, I heard it. Two clear, firm knocks on the door. My heart stopped for a second. I froze, trying to process what had just happened. There was no logical reason for someone to knock at that hour. The hotel staff were asleep, and I wasn't expecting any visitors. I thought about ignoring it, but the knocks came again, this time more insistent. Two sharp taps, as if whoever it was pressing hard against the door. My mind went back to the diary's warning, "Don't open the door." But at the same time, a morbid curiosity gnawed at me. Who could it be? Why were they knocking exactly at this hour? I tried to convince myself it was just a confused staff member or maybe another lost guest, but something deep inside screamed at me to stay away from that door. I sat frozen on the bed, staring at the door as if it might open on its own at any moment. The knocks didn't come again right away, but the silence that followed was even worse, heavy, like it was pressing me to do something. I tried to rationalize, maybe it was just the wind or some external noise that sounded like it was coming from the door. But deep down, I knew that was nonsense. The sound had been too clear, too deliberate. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera app, trying to use the night vision to peek through the peephole without getting too close. When I finally adjusted the image, my blood ran cold. There was no one on the other side. Just the empty hallway, dimly lit by a flickering yellow light. But then, as I watched the screen, something strange happened. A shadow darted quickly across the frame, so fast I almost thought I'd imagined it. I put the phone back on the nightstand, trying to steady my ragged breathing. I wanted to get out of there, run to the front desk, and ask for help, but something kept me rooted to the room, maybe fear, maybe curiosity. That's when the knocks came again, this time louder and more urgent. 3 quick taps, followed by an uncomfortable pause. After that, a dragging sound, like something was being pulled across the floor outside. My mind started conjuring terrible images, claws, long fingers, something that shouldn't be there. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting, but the diary's warning kept echoing in my head, "Don't open the door." No matter how much I wanted to ignore it, I knew I couldn't just pretend nothing was happening. I got up slowly, trying not to make a sound, and walked to the door, but kept a safe distance. I pressed my ear against the wood, trying to catch any noise from the other side. At first, all I heard was silence, a silence so deep it felt almost artificial. But then, very faintly, came a whisper. It was almost inaudible, like someone was speaking directly into my ear, even though they were on the other side of the door. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent, almost pleading. I quickly backed away, feeling a chill crawl up my spine. I returned to the bed, trying to decide what to do. I called the front desk, but the line was dead, no dial tone, nothing. I tried using my phone to access the internet, but there was no signal. It was as if the room had been cut off from the rest of the world. That's when I noticed something even stranger. The diary I'd left on the nightstand was open to a different page. I didn't remember touching it after reading that chilling sentence. When I looked closer, I saw that something had been written on the previously blank page. The handwriting was the same as the last entry, but this time the message was directed at me, "You shouldn't have stayed." My blood ran cold. How was this possible? I was sure the diary had been completely closed when I'd left it there. Before I could process it, the knocks at the door started again, now stronger, more insistent, as if whoever it was losing patience. And then, a metallic sound echoed through the hallway, like someone was trying to break the lock. The sound of the lock being forced snapped me out of my paralysis. I ran to the door and threw my full weight against it, trying to keep it from opening. But it was as if there was a supernatural force on the other side, something much stronger than I could handle. The doorknob turned on its own, and the door began to open slowly, no matter how hard I tried to hold it shut. My heart was pounding so fast I thought it might burst. At the last second, before the door swung wide open, I decided to run to the bathroom and lock myself inside. I grabbed my phone and tried calling emergency services again, but there was still no signal. The only sound echoing through the room was the door creaking open, followed by heavy, dragging footsteps coming toward me. When I barricaded myself in the bathroom, I noticed something was wrong with the mirror. It was cracked, even though I was sure it had been intact when I entered the room. The cracks formed words, as if someone had carved them there, "You've already been seen." I didn't understand what it meant, but before I could think, I heard a voice coming from the room, a hoarse, distorted voice repeating over and over, "Open the door." I stayed curled up on the bathroom floor until morning, trembling and praying for it all to end. When I left in the morning, the hallway was empty, and the front desk confirmed I was the only guest in that wing. But the diary was gone. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. And whenever I hear knocks at midnight, I know it's better not to open the door. Me and my husband decided to spend the weekend at a hotel located at the top of a tall building in the city center. It was a beautiful, modern place, but with that touch of old elegance that made us choose it as soon as we saw the pictures online. Our room was on the top floor, with a spacious balcony and an incredible view of the city lights at night. When we arrived, we left the curtain open to enjoy the view while we got ready for bed. I'm not a big fan of heights, but something about that view made me feel at ease, at least until that night. It all happened so fast that I still wonder if it was real or just a nightmare. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up with a strange feeling, like I was being watched. At first, I thought it was just my imagination or maybe the exhaustion from the previous day playing tricks on me. But then, when I looked toward the balcony, my blood ran cold. There was someone outside, a tall, dark figure standing right in front of the glass door leading to the balcony. It was motionless, its face turned directly toward me, as if staring straight at me. There was no way anyone could have gotten onto the balcony without passing through the room, since the only entrance was the sliding door right next to the bed. And yet, there it was, standing in the darkness, just a few feet away from where I lay. I screamed so loud that my husband woke up immediately. He jumped out of bed, startled, asking what was wrong, and I pointed to the balcony, unable to take my eyes off the figure outside. My heart was pounding, and I could barely breathe. But when he finally looked at where I was pointing, there was no one there. The balcony was completely empty, as if no one had ever been there. "Are you sure you saw someone?" he asked, his voice a mix of concern and skepticism. I was absolutely certain, that figure had been there, staring at me through the glass, with a presence so intense it felt like it was sucking the air out of the room. But now, there was nothing but emptiness. I tried to explain what I had seen, but my words came out jumbled, as if I couldn't believe them myself. My husband went to the glass door and opened it, carefully looking outside. There was no sign of anyone, no footprints on the balcony floor, no movement nearby. It was impossible for someone to have left without passing through the room or climbing down the building, since we were on the top floor. He tried to reassure me, saying it was probably just a reflection or maybe a half-awake dream, but I knew what I had seen. That figure, it had been there. And something deep inside me told me this wasn't over. I went back to bed, but I couldn't relax for even a second. I lay there, staring at the balcony, too afraid to close my eyes. My husband tried to calm me down, saying it was probably just my imagination or maybe some city lights casting strange shadows. But I knew that wasn't true. The figure I had seen wasn't a shadow or a reflection. It was there, alive, looking at me like it knew exactly who I was. I could still feel its gaze, even with the glass door closed. I tried to convince myself that I was safe inside the room, but something about that presence told me it could come inside whenever it wanted. A few minutes later, I started hearing a low noise coming from the balcony, a soft dragging sound, like someone walking slowly across the wooden floor. I froze in bed, too scared to move. "Did you hear that?" I whispered to my husband, who was already half asleep again. He mumbled something unintelligible and turned to the other side, thinking I was overreacting. But the sound continued, getting closer to the glass door. I shut my eyes tight, praying for it to go away, but then I felt something even more terrifying. The glass began to shake slightly, as if someone was pressing their hands against it. I opened my eyes and saw it, right there, just inches from me. A dark mark appeared on the glass, like a handprint pressed against it. There was no one outside, but the mark remained for a few seconds before slowly fading away. I wanted to scream again, but my voice wouldn't come out. My entire body trembled, and I curled up under the blankets, pulling them up to my face as if that could protect me. My husband finally noticed my panic and turned on the bedroom light, illuminating everything around us. The balcony was empty, just like before, but something in the air felt different, heavier, as if the room was filled with an eerie energy. He went to the glass door again and inspected it carefully, looking for a logical explanation for what I had seen. "There's nothing here," he said, trying to sound calm, but I could tell he was unsettled too. There were no marks on the glass, no cracks, no signs that anyone had been there. We decided to close the curtain, something we never do because we love the view, but that night, it was impossible to sleep with it open. Even so, the feeling of being watched didn't go away. I could sense something on the other side of the curtain, something I couldn't see but that was definitely there, waiting. Then, I heard another sound from outside, a faint scratching, like nails scraping against the glass. I jumped out of bed and grabbed my husband's arm, terrified. He tried to calm me down, saying it was probably just the wind or a bird, but we both knew that didn't make sense. We were on the top floor, with no trees or poles nearby. And the sound, it was too specific, too human. Before I could say anything, the curtain started moving on its own, as if someone outside was slowly pulling it aside. My husband gripped my hand tightly as we watched the curtain, waiting for it to stop moving. But it didn't, it kept shifting, slowly, until it revealed the glass door behind it. There was no one outside, but the glass was fogged up, as if someone had run their hands across it. And then, right in the center of the glass, marks began to appear, handprints, as if someone was pressing their palms against it from the outside. It was impossible. No one could have reached that balcony without entering the room first. My husband tried to open the door to check, but as soon as he touched the handle, he felt something strange. The metal was ice cold, far colder than it should have been on a warm summer night. He pulled his hand away quickly, and the marks on the glass vanished, as if they had never been there. We stayed awake for the rest of the night, with all the lights on and the curtain completely shut. In the morning, we decided to leave the hotel before breakfast, unable to bear staying in that room for even one more minute. When I told the receptionist about our experience, she just gave us a strange look and said, "You're not the first ones to complain about that." She didn't explain further, but her tone made it clear she knew something she wasn't willing to share. To this day, whenever I think about that night, I get chills. And I've never been able to sleep with the hotel curtains open again. After all, some things simply have no explanation, and it's better not to risk finding out.